and welcome back to another video, or hello if you're new as well. In this channel I document my journey with art from January, specifically taking myself seriously because I turned 30. In this video I'm going to be going through all of the artwork that I've done this week, and it's in a little bit of a mini series. There's two prior to this one where I'm showing the work that I'm doing as I'm taking my art a bit more seriously and opening myself up to just play. When I did film this, I was talking, so you might see my hands moving around a bit. I might point at things, but unfortunately, the audio had some sort of annoying sort of air conditioning sound. And so I thought it would be better for you guys and better for me if I just did a voiceover over the top with the same footage, and I hope that that's okay. So this week it definitely looks like I've done less work. I think more so because there's a lot of work in my sketchbook. I made a concertina sketchbook as well and used both sides of it. So I think when you look at this little gathering of artwork, it doesn't look like much, but there was a lot of creativity going on. There was a lot of other things going on, and I'm proud of the fact that I did maintain creating art every day and didn't let all of those other like busy jobs sort of get in the way. So looking at this, it might not look very impressive, but I think it is, and you'll see it in a minute. So I'll start off with these ones. It's hard to see on the screen, but I used masking fluid to write out two words, and I wrote the words freedom and creativity, and then went over the top of that with watercolour to add in some leafy designs, and I really like them, really creative. I needed something that was very low thought, quite a thoughtless activity, just making something for the sake of it. I didn't have an idea of why I wanted these or what for. And I just think that that's important to sort of gather those moments and still make something. Okay, so next we're in my sketchbook, and here are just some really simple, like blocky paintings. I think I must have been trying out a different style on this day with the big chunky black outline, which normally isn't my style. And then on the right there is a bird. It's completely made up. It's not based on any particular kind of bird. I just felt like painting a bird. And I used watercolor and colored pencil for these ones. But then I was thinking, for the birds, I used to paint birds a lot and I used to use gouache for them um, when I was still like sort of learning, but I've kind of lost that skill. So I'm thinking I might come back and I might actually paint a real bird with gouache and see how that looks, but I haven't done that yet, so that's just a thought in my head. I can tell with all of the artwork that I've made during this time, I was sort of craving like an abstract sort of feel. And so I made this little mini concertina sketchbook, just very abstracted. You can see the brush strokes, it's got lots of texture, limited colour, and it's really good way of using your imagination to sort of make it come to life. I really enjoy how the concertina sketchbooks can stand up on their own and the way that they're layered. It sort of gives you a little bit of a perspective, which is just a little bit different than a flat page, and I'm really enjoying that. So this week I feel like I struggled a little bit. I think I just had too much going on at one time, and whenever I wanted to paint, I was either overworking it or I was sort of abandoning it halfway, and this was a little bit of both. I think I overworked it with watercolor in a lot of places, and then I sort of just gave up. Um, and then others where I've sketched them out slightly, um, I then didn't get to painting them, which I think is absolutely fine. Sometimes I've been really enjoying sketching, particularly this week. And so this is one of those. This is from Jesmond Dean. This is an old mill. I'm pointing to the door there because you can go in there. It's ruins, so there's no roof or anything like that, and there's nothing inside. You just go in and you can have a little walk around and see this old mill, but the wheel is still there, and it's really interesting to see right next to the Dean. This is a concertina sketchbook that I took to Jesmond Dean, which is near me in Newcastle. And I painted the old mill on one of the panels, and I captured a lot more detail in the sketch when I had a little bit more time. Um, but I think that it's important to show those together because they sort of came around a similar time. I only took the concertina sketchbook with my watercolours at the time, and then I used a photo to do the sketch that you've just seen in my sketchbook. So in the concertina sketchbook, I started off with that one, which is the old mill, and then I painted some of the things you can see. So Jesmondine is beautiful. A lot of people get their wedding photos taken there, and these two panels, there's the waterfall and the bridge. And so when you stand on the top of that bridge, you can see the waterfall. And then there's some rocks next to the waterfall where you can look back and see the bridge. There's a lot of lovely walks at Jesmondine as well. And so this is one of the paths that you can walk along, and I'm pointing to the Dean runs along this path but lower down. Um, there's also a lot of interesting trees. I always sort of notice the trees that are a little bit different, a little bit twisty. Maybe they look like a figure or something. And I feel like this tree always stands out to me. It's on a particular part of the path. And now every time I walk past it, it just has this sort of magical feeling. All of the branches are sort of like wiggly like this, and it's sort of leaning in a tiny bit to the path, and you just look through that the branches and you can see the Dean underneath, and I just think it's wonderful. So yeah, I really enjoy the concertina sketchbooks. I'm so glad that I made them last week, and this week this is probably one of my favorite ones, my favorite things that I've done. And yeah, I'm really happy with that. I made this little sleeve just using the same paper, and holding it together with washi tape, and then I just painted on the front what it was. I think that this is a really cute idea. Say if I have a few of them, then I'll have the title on the front and I know what's inside, and then also adding the date just allows me to look through it. So say in like 10 years time, um, or something, I don't know. Looking back, I might not live here then. I might live somewhere else, or Jesmondine might have changed and I might have documented that a little bit, and I could always go back and make a little series of these concertina sketchbooks for myself to keep and to document the things that I see. Okay, now we're moving on to these, and not my proudest at all, but in terms of looseness and play and experimentation, I'm very proud of these because it's not something I would normally allow myself the time to do, if that makes sense. So I needed something abstract. I needed, again, another like thoughtless activity, and that's what these are, just using colour and shapes and just blobbing it on to make these forms. So I used references from Pinterest and I literally just blobbed it all on, and it maybe took a few minutes, but I'm keeping them as a document of a time where I did play, and I would love to sort of get used to that sort of thing and building my work up from there, but I'm not quite there yet. So that leads nicely on to my sketchbook side of things, where I'm using colour that's already in the palette. I'm not thinking about colours I need to mix or anything like that. And I just sat in my favourite spot in the whole garden facing the pond and painted it. I just sort of, it started off, I was maybe doing the outline and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I ended up just sketching the whole thing with a water brush and the colour that I had in the mixing part of my palette. So no new colour or anything like that. And I think although it's not a finished piece, it's exactly what my sketchbook should be for. It should be for ideas and documentation and experimentation. And this is just what I gravitated towards doing on that day. So we've got a little pond and some little frogs have moved in. and they are so teeny tiny, and I love to watch them and see if I can spot them. They're really good at hiding. But then we've got like the planters and the fairy lights, and it all looks just a little bit magical. And so I really enjoy this piece because I know what it is. I can see it. I remember the day was hot and it was early morning and no one else was awake yet. And I really, really enjoy this. We've got like a solar panel with a little fountain that like sprays water into the pond, and that's so beautiful as well. So that's what like my sketchbook is, and I think should be when you paint on location, sort of a document of like the places that you've been and the experiments that you've done. So talking about experiments, that's what this is. So this was when I pulled out my gouache paints again and started to think about how do I use these? It's been very long time, possibly a year, maybe, I don't know. But these paints are old, they're cracked, they need hydrating seriously. You can see there's like other colors like poked in, things like that. And yeah, I'm trying to use up all of the art supplies that I have. Like I said earlier, we might not be living here in a few years' time. And so it would be really cool to make sure that we use up all of the art supplies that we have in the house. And I guess for like play purposes, using the supplies that you don't naturally gravitate towards is fun, and it's sort of a challenge, and it makes you think about what you might use them for, or you sort of learn new skills on how to mix certain colors when you're sort of used to using the same ones every time. And so that's what these were, just a references from Pinterest and some old wash paint, and just leaving them as the raw paint and not going in with pencil. I feel like that was important as sort of like a documentation. Then moving on to this one, this is back with watercolour after I'd used the gouache, and I struggled a little bit, which is really strange for me. But I don't know if it was just the amount of things that I have going on this week, or I don't know if it was just a creativity sort of rut. But I felt like I struggled a little bit with this one and I abandoned it halfway through. I think that that's important to show. I didn't fill in the grass. I sort of half did the wall, and I just wasn't feeling this painting, and I wasn't sure if it was because I'd been with gouache and then it was this transition back to watercolor, or if it was the other way around, or I don't know. So going back to the gouache painting, I definitely want to try more of these and see if I can create like a finished piece with the gouache. Um, Yeah, this week's been really good for experimentation, and I am proud of myself for that, making sure that I'm listening to that little creative voice in my head. Um, because I've noticed that when I'm listening to that voice and I'm making this like quote unquote bad art, um, other creativity is coming. So the motivation to use the gouache. I've wrote a lot of stories and poems and things as I've been busy in life, but in creativity, I've sort of just been letting it flow. So, yeah, I'm really happy with what I did this week. And yeah, if you like this kind of video, I've got a little series going where I've got two prior to this one where I'm showing what I've been doing each week. And I'm really enjoying this documentation. It'll be really nice for me as well to be able to look back and see sort of motivation wise, like what work have I made? Like when did I make it? What did I make around the same time? Things like that. In the previous weeks, there is a lot of like larger work and a lot of loose work, and I think in this one there's a few more in the sketchbook because I'm trying to be more intentional about using the sketchbook. But it's been so lovely to have you here, and I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!